Welcome to JagaVision. I'm Jared Nyberg. I'm co-owner of JagaSilk. We have a really interesting guest today, and my guest is Hiromi Toma.
Many things that were very Ryūkyūan, we lost it. And one of these things was the tattoo. I started at the end of 2022, and I've already tattooed 103 people now. It's a powerful image when you see. My grandparents who came from Okinawa before the Second World War, but before this, when it was independent nation, it was called Ryūkyū Kingdom. It was already independent nation before the Japanese colonization at the end of 19th century. And that's why this tattoo was disappeared because of the prohibition by the Japanese government. So yeah, it was a practice that was banned. That's why I'm trying to revive in this.
To paraphrase, you're talking about traditional tattoos different from modern tattoos, and that the modern tattoo is more about an individual expression. Whereas the traditional tattoo is maybe something that confirms community.
It is.
The area that they're from, and it's collective. Okay, so it's about connecting to that.
And Hajichi is inside this group of ancestral tattoo.
Okay.
So we have like the symbols that before the prohibition, the community could recognize the meaning of each symbol. And after colonization and after the prohibition, we lost so many things. And one of these things was the tattoo and was the language, the many things that were very Ryūkyūan. We lost it, and we also lost their meanings. So there are many meanings that we don't know, and I think we'll never know because we lost it. And there were many information that were passed by oral story. And as we don't have the language anymore, we also lost part of our story because of this prohibition of the language.
The language is lost.
It's almost lost.
Almost lost. Okay.
It's something that we are also trying to revive.
Right. Okay.
But if you go to Okinawa, people will speak Japanese.
Right. I have some Okinawan friends who refer to Japan, like Japanese, as if it's like a foreign language, and they talk about Japan as if it's another country, because it really in their heads it is. And really, nation states they're in our head, right? This idea of being connected to it. I think it's really tough to try and revive the language as well, though. But that's so important for connecting with your past.
But I think when we say that Okinawa is different from Japan, I think we are not trying to say like they are different from us.
Right. Okay.
We are trying to say that we are treated different, even when we are now all Japan.
Right.
The Japanese government still now treating this area different from the other provinces.
Reminds me a lot of the challenges faced by the Ainu.
The same thing.
Right, where they're just there's a lot of banning of languages. There's more recently, there's been some. I mean, for a very long time, Japan didn't recognize any other group. Like they said they were one ethnic group, and there was no separation. But more recently, there's been a little bit of recognition. Of the Ainu, at least. Was there any? Do you know if there's any recognition of the Ryūkyūan as their own ethnic group by the Japanese government?
I know that Ainu is considered as indigenous people by Japan, and Ryūkyū is a place that is also indigenous. Is considered indigenous by the UN.
Okay.
But it's not considered indigenous by Japan.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I think it's because of the land, because there are many American bases, military bases on this area.
Right.
And there is also Japanese military base on this area.
Right.
And little by little, they are taking all the land for them. So I think if they recognize this area as indigenous, they would have to reconsider all of these things, and I don't know if they are
Right. So it's like it's socio, like there's a lot of political backgrounding this. The country itself probably, the nation state only feels comfortable if they have the Americans backing them up, and they have kind of sacrificed Okinawa for the purpose of this sort of stability. It's actually quite horrifying, a lot of the stories that you hear about the bases, and there's been some news about how the military is involved with it's really, really shocking. We're gonna do, so I like to do,
this is hot water.
I just preheated it.
Okay.
So I put hot water in it to make the teapot warm. And then I'm gonna put 7 grams of tea in. And then what I like to do is I like to do 70 degrees centigrade, and I'm gonna set the timer this time for 1 minute and 15 seconds. And then I'm gonna fill this to 210 grams. This is just our own style. At JagaSilk, we like to weigh everything. We supply a lot of cafes, so I wanna have the baristas making the tea always a very similar flavor. So we control that.
Wow.
So 217, there we go. And then when that's done, I'll pour it into a separate. We've just been talking a lot about the Ryūkyūan. We've been talking about the military presence of the United States in Japan, and how Japan treats Okinawa very differently from the rest of the country. And we were talking about some of the traditional tattoos that it's called Hajichi, I think is the name.
Yeah,
it's a Ryūkyūan art form, and Ryūkyū is the traditional name for what the Japanese call Okinawa. Okay, but we're gonna have some tea, and this is just one that I just roasted. So, cheers.
Cheers.
We are.
Wow.
Is it good?
Good, really good.
Okay. So obviously you have an interest in traditional culture and your own traditional culture. But what is it that pulled you to Hajichi? I would understand that you're a tattoo artist as part of your career, and that this has been a way to explore that, or is this just a brand new thing for you, or what is?
Oh, this is a brand new thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I started tattooing just for Hajichi.
Oh wow! Okay.
So before this, I wasn't a tattooist.
Okay.
And I the first time I read about Hajichi, it was in 2020.
Okay.
And it was something that shocked me in 2 different ways, because the first thing that I was surprised to was I've never heard about it. And my mom, for example, she's very Okinawan pride, and she knows, she listened to many Okinawan music. She knows how to speak some Uchinaguchi, which is some of the language that people used to speak in this Ryūkyū island.
Uchinaguchi.
Uchinaguchi, yeah.
Okay.
And my mom knows some of these words.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about how my mom didn't know about this tattoo.
Even though she's so proud of being Okinawan.
Yeah, she's so proud. And I was shocked about this, that we've never heard about it. My family didn't mention this. And the other surprise I had was how fast it is to have a traditional thing erased when it is forced to erase it. So it was a mix of feelings when I've read for the first time about Hajichi. And it was after this I think as many other Okinawan descendants and Okinawan people who had this first reading about Hajichi, I think they feel like obsessed with this topic, because we want to know more and more, and it's so it's so far from what we think about what our obas, our grandmas are, and our great grandmas can do. And so it's when I saw the photos, it was something far from what I thought the image of my great grandmas could be.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like with the bold hajichis, with the bold tattoos on their hands and on their forearms. Like I could never imagine my great grandma with tattoo,
Right.
you know, and so visible and so bold and yeah, it's a powerful image when you see. Oh, I also bring this book because there are some photos from this last women with Hajichi.
Okay, let's.
And you can see like.
Can you show the camera as well?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, right on the hands.
On the hands, and you can see like as if it could be happening now.
Yeah.
You know, it's very humanized.
Yeah.
You can see with clothes that your grandma could wear today.
And there she is with it on her hands. It's again like similar. It reminds me a lot of the Ainu have facial tattoos that they do.
Yeah, they also have on hands.
Okay.
And on forearms too. I don't know the technique they use, but it's more. It's similar because it's graphism, like Hajichi.
Oh, very cool. That's amazing.
Yeah, there are many photos. That there is one that I think it's the best. There is this one.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's very powerful. Hey.
Yeah, very powerful.
Wow. How does this art form? Is it similar to modern tattooing in like there's an injection of an ink, or how does the tattooing process itself work?
How the process?
Yeah.
They used to make Hajichi with the technique of stick and poke.
Okay.
So stick and poke is one of the ancestral tattoo techniques, and we can find this technique in many different places of the world. So it's not exclusively of Ryūkyū tattoo. So it's like you have a stick. At that time they use bamboo stick, and you put the needles on this stick as a support.
Okay.
And you can make like dot by dot. So it's a slow process. Because when you are using a machine to tattoo, you can make like a pen. So you can make a line just similar as a pen. But when you are doing by stick and poke, you do like dot by dot. It's not possible to do like this. You have to do dot by dot. So that's why the aesthetic is different from the machine, because you can see the dots.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's more like I don't even know what to compare it to, but I think there's a kind of weaving that does this, where it's just like you have to build it like one spot at a time. And
it's similar. Yeah,
it must be a much slower process.
Yeah, it's much slower.
Okay, so is that why the tattoos themselves are more like a collection of smaller tattoos? Like, do people have like full?
Yeah, but also on the hands.
Yeah, I
think the stick and poke is a better technique for hands.
Okay.
Because it's something you can put ink.
Yeah.
On those how you say this?
Knuckle.
On the knuckle and on this fold skin.
Yeah.
I don't know
yeah, the soft skin on the knuckle. I'm sure there's a technical term, but I would just call it the soft skin on the knuckle.
Yeah, and it's easier to put ink with the stick and poke technique than with machine.
Interesting. And is it more commonly done on the hands, or is it a whole body thing?
Stick and poke?
Yes.
No, stick and poke, I think in different parts of the world, in modern tattoo, there are people who also use this technique. They used in every part
Of course,
the
of course.
world.
I mean, in Ryūkyū traditional technique, is this normally just on the arms?
On hands and forearms.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, but now on this revival time, there are people who are also receiving Hajichi in other parts of the body.
Okay, during the revival. Well, one of my favorite musical artists, his name is Jordi Savall, and he is an older man in his 80s, and he's finding old music from around the world. He started with a very European perspective, and he's still very much finding this like old music it's called early music, 1500s, 1600s. But he's been inviting artists from all over the world, and he's been kind of creating a revival of sorts. But I love the way he talks about it as a living history, rather than it being, and I think language is this way too, rather than it being something that we're trying to find and reenact perfect to its source material. Instead, what we're trying to do is revive an art, and an art is a living thing. So it's allowing it to sort of have a home again. And I guess it's part of it is understanding what are those traditional techniques, what is the old way that this was done, and then being open to, I guess, a new expression of that old art form, right? I think. Yeah. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. No, it's interesting you mentioned this because at the beginning when I first read about Hajichi, I was putting this on the past, like stuck in the past, like, oh, it's something we lost. And when I started doing some artworks using Hajichi only as reference, only as reference and not as a tattoo in itself.
Right.
I was
inspired by.
Inspired by.
Yeah.
And I remember that I was doing at that time a mentorship.
Okay.
And with two artists in Brazil, and one of them said that why I was not considering Hajichi as a tattoo and not only as inspiration for doing other artworks. And then I started thinking about it, that I was putting this on the past. And then I realized that I was seeing most of the photos I was seeing at that time was taken by a Japanese anthropologist in Japan, in Japan, and the way he took those pictures, and not only in Okinawa, not only Ryūkyū, but also in other part of the in other nations that there were also Japanese colonization. This photographer, and he's also anthropologist, he was taking these pictures to put all of these nations on the past, as if they were like the past of Japan. Like Japan is modern, and all of these other nations were
part of its history.
Were like savage, or like.
One of my friends is Kwakwakiwak, and they're a nation in northern Vancouver Island. She actually went to New Zealand, and she opened up a magazine, and it said, there was an article, the Kwakwakiwak used to exist in Canada, and it was all black and white, and it is as if they don't exist anymore. But she's Kwakwakiwak. She speaks the language, which is Kwagyuth. So she speaks the language, like not fluently, but she's really trying to learn from her grandmother and to keep that language alive as well. But it was shocking for her to see it written as if they don't exist.
It as something
that's part of Canada's past, but
but they are still there.
Yeah, it's a very, I think, alarming feeling. I can only imagine. I look at it, and I'm part of the settler society, and I look at it, and it's shocking to me. So I can only imagine what it feels like if your heritage, your parents, your grandparents are connected in this way. It's like, okay, so to kind of I don't even know if rescue, I love the word revive. It's great. Bring it back to life.
And then I was realizing how photos are not neutral.
Right. They have something to say.
Yeah,
the photo
they have
itself.
something to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I found this book, then I felt different. Like I felt that this is something alive. Is something.
What is special about this book? Is this from the perspective of a Ryūkyūan instead of an anthropologist? Or?
This book is from a photographer in Okinawa.
Okay.
His name is Yamashiro.
Let's get the
Hiroaki. He's still alive.
Okay. Okay.
And
what is the name of the book? Can you show us that for the camera? Okay. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay.
His target was to take pictures of the last women with Hajichi, and his target was take picture of 100 women. But at that time, there wasn't 100 anymore. So, yeah, these are the last women with Hajichi.
Wow. Okay, so he couldn't complete the project because there weren't enough people with the tattoos. You've done 103 now, though, so this is
something connected.
That's pretty cool. You said another reason that you were connected to this is it's also there's a kind of a women's empowerment element to this, right? Is this so there's a actual like Ryūkyūan cultural history of women doing Hajichi or of receiving it, or how does that work in this?
The first registration of Hajichi appeared on the 15th century.
15th century, okay.
But it doesn't mean that it was the first time that Hajichi was done, because tattoo is something that we cannot age its own skin, it can disappear.
For sure.
And at this beginning, Hajichi was done between shamans, shamans in Ryūkyū. So it was done in a small group, and it was something spiritual. It's like an initiation.
Okay.
To give spiritual power to the next generation of shamans. In Ryūkyū Kingdom, there is this separation of men on politics and women in spiritual work.
Oh, interesting.
And it's something that one is how can I say, complementary of the other. And so Hajichi was inside this small group. And then there was the Satsuma invasion. Satsuma now is Kagoshima in the south of Japan.
Right.
And they invaded Ryūkyū Kingdom, and this small group and the other people have to be separated, and they were split in different parts of this island.
Oh.
And at that time, Hajichi also were split.
Oh, okay.
And then Hajichi became something more common. So every woman could have a Hajichi. It was not only for shaman.
You have to pardon my historical ignorance, but when was the Satsuma invasion?
It was on 1609.
1609. Okay, so since the 1600s-ish, like late 1600s onwards, you start to see women who are not shamans.
Yeah, with Hajichi.
With Hajichi.
Yeah,
okay.
And then at the beginning it was more like an initiation. And after the Satsuma invasion, Hajichi became more common, and it was Hajichi was done as a meaning of different phase of life.
Okay.
So you can see some testimonial of people saying that there were already children with Hajichi. So there is like those symbols, for example, that were done, that used to be...
Move this here. Sorry, and you can show the camera. Okay.
That used to be done on 7-8 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the mainland island, because there are other islands. There are about 104 islands on this archipelago.
Okay.
So
wow,
that's why
didn't know that.
Yeah. And this other symbol they used to have with 14 or 18 years. So Hajichi was done part by part.
Wow, so it's like part of almost like a coming of age.
Yeah.
You would have children get certain tattoos, and then as they became teenagers, and then young adults, and then older adults. And then they would sort of symbolize the phases of your life.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. Okay.
There is also a testimonial that say about women with 60 years.
Okay.
Having Hajichi tattoo. So it was done. It was a process.
Right.
So before Satoma's invasion, it was like this, more about phases of life.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that the other wasn't being doing, like the shamans were also existing.
Right.
So they were still doing Hajichi as part of initiation, as parallel of this other woman
right.
who were receiving as phase of life. Right. And then it was prohibited at the end of 19th century because of Japanese colonization. And there was like a period of some reforms inside this island where the Japanese government were trying to make the Ryūkyūan more Japanese than the Japanese. So during this period, there's many practice and many parts of our culture were prohibited. As I said, our language, the tattoo, spiritual practice, and also there were some where there are reforms, there is violence, and I think there was during this period that people started thinking that tattoo is something bad and something ugly and something related to marginalized people. Right. Because it was something criminalized. So.
Right. Yeah, they consider it dangerous in Japan to this day.
Yeah.
You can't go into a hot spring with a tattoo.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Because
still now.
There's this connection to the Yakuza. There's a book written about, again, similar treatment during that time period here. That it's called "Kill the Indian, Save the Man," and it was a similar idea of taking away language, taking away culture, forcing assimilation, making people speak and act. What was really, really horrific, though, is that there was no expectation that those people would move up in government or get powerful positions. It was take away the culture, take away the language, and force them to work as close to slaves for the community around them. And so not having the same rights. So I think it's like making them more Japanese than Japanese might be. I don't know. I haven't researched this history as much, but I would assume that if it's a similar thinking pattern, then Ryūkyūans, they were not allowed to move up in government, I would imagine.